Dudus Coke. Camille Coke, who also goes by the name Sandy, was handed over to the police about 11 this morning. Her surrender comes days after another of the Coke siblings, Leighton, also called Liberty, turned himself in on Tuesday. Meanwhile, police say another of the 25 persons of interest named yesterday has turned himself in. Nyron Hawkins, otherwise called Ice from Spanish Town, turned himself in today. Lawmen have even said others not on their list have also turned themselves in recent days.
Chief Justice Zayla McCalla has reserved judgment in an application by attorneys for Christopher Dudus Cook to block his extradition to the United States. No timeline was given by the Chief Justice as to when she will deliver her eagerly anticipated ruling. Lawyers representing the reputed West Kingston Don want a judicial review of the decision by Justice Minister Dorothy Lightburn to sign the warrant to proceed with the extradition request. Coke's attorneys say the government had for months been stonewalling the request, arguing wiretap evidence had been illegally given to U.S. authorities but made an about turn without any significant change in the situation. However, the Attorney General noted in a fresh affidavit this week that she also took non-wiretap evidence into consideration when she gave the green light for the extradition to proceed. Now, if Coke's attorneys are granted leave for judicial review, there could be a stay of the warrant to arrest Coke, who is wanted by U.S. authorities on charges of conspiracy to traffic guns and drugs. On the other hand, the government lawyers want the extradition process to proceed, as they argue Coke will have avenues for redress through the local courts if he believes he has been unfairly treated.
The very latest now on the number of bodies found since the violence in West Kingston. The Security Ministry says some 47 bodies have been identified so far by relatives. According to the Security Ministry, initial identification was done using photographs, and relatives will be advised when they can visit various locations to view the actual bodies. Residents are being advised not to go to any funeral homes demanding to identify bodies. In the meantime, the Security Ministry says it's still waiting on Public Defender Earl Witter to provide independent pathologists to observe the remaining post-mortems. The ministry says the government pathologist is ready to start post-mortems but is unable to do so because the Public Defender had asked that no more be done without an independent pathologist. The ministry says other post-mortems outside of the West Kingston conflict will be done as scheduled.
The Press Association of Jamaica has written to the Prime Minister raising concern about the absence of independent media during his recent visit to Tivoli Gardens, as well as visits by the heads of the security forces. PAJ President Byron Buckley says the association believes it would have been appropriate to have the media accompany the Prime Minister on his first visit to what was the center of a major confrontation. The PAJ adds that the distribution of video footage, like you're seeing now, convey the impression that the office of the Prime Minister is controlling the information. The PAJ believes if there were security challenges, this could have been addressed by a scaled-down or pooled media presence.
Residents of Longwood District in Clarendon are expressing shock and anger following the murder of a senior citizen. The body of 85-year-old Vashti Giles was found sprawled across a bed at her home about 8 this morning by a caregiver who discovered the door open. There were bruises to her face and feet. Miss Giles has been described as a quiet person.
He come here, can live, and he don't trouble nobody. He live courteous with everybody. He go in church, down to Tuesday we have conference and him in that church.
Now, in the meantime, members of the community are angry with what has happened and are calling on the police to carry out thorough investigations to find the perpetrator.
Pan a next level and get them whole lady a kill. It's not reasonable. January bitter. And my heart bleed feet. Trust me. I could have my mother once back then, not show him die. When me look upon that lady, me I look upon my grandmother, me I look upon my mother. So something like that shouldn't reach her.
The government's plan to divest its shares in Jamaica will come under the microscope of Contractor General Greg Christie, despite a legal effort by government lawyers to stop him. It's now clear that the Office of the Contractor General, the OCG, has not completely accepted assertions that a firm, Port Reliant, did very little but facilitate communication between the negotiating teams. Andrew Cannon has more on what's shaping up to be a firestorm over a critical government divestment.
Is there dirt to be uncovered regarding the bauxite deal? From all indications, Contractor General Greg Christie thinks so, and we understand the OCG wants the deal stopped. Therefore, come next Wednesday, June 9, the OCG will be issuing the first statutory requisition in a bid to lift what it believes is the veil of secrecy over the decision to divest the government's 45% stake in Jamalco to the Chinese-based firm Hong Fan. It means, in essence, Mr. Christie will be using his quasi-judicial powers to investigate high-ranking persons of interest involved in the transaction. It's not clear at this stage who these persons could be. We understand that among the issues that has puzzled the OCG is that the divestment process was not subject to competitive bidding, so it's not certain if the best possible offer had in fact been made by Hong Fan. We further understand that the OCG believes there has not been sufficient openness about the arrangement, which is seen as a contrast to how Air Jamaica was divested. Meanwhile, swords are being crossed regarding the legality of Mr. Christie's action. Whereas the Attorney General's chambers is reported to have claimed that the OCG has no legislative basis to investigate the sale because it's being asserted that the sale of shares is not a contract as defined by the Contractor General's Act, the OCG is adamant that it does have such a power. The claim is based on the opinion of Dr. Lloyd Barnett QC, who according to the OCG has held that Mr. Christie does in fact have lawful jurisdiction over the sale of public assets. The investigation of the divestment of the Sangster Airport by NCP was seen as a precedent. So now this is the question some are asking. Why is it that an administration that has championed the cause to investigate deals such as the sale of the London Heathrow slot doesn't want the spotlight to shine on the Jamaica divestment? Is there something to hide? A firm has figured in all of this, Port Reliant. What is its role and who are the principals? Questions, questions. Now will the minister answer? Andrew Cannon, CVM News.
I hope you're leaving.
Meanwhile, we made several calls to the cellular phone of Minister Robertson. However, they were not answered. We left several messages, but they were not responded to.
The hurricane season, which started Tuesday, has caught drain cleaning exercises in the corporate area off guard. The unrest in West Kingston and other sections of the corporate area last week is only one of the challenges Mayor Desmond McKenzie has had to contend with. Here's Dwayne Burbick.
Desmond McKenzie says the corporate area's drain cleaning mitigation program was about 40 to 45% advanced last year this time. This year, though, they are nowhere near that. He said engineers are only now concluding their assessments as the activities over the last 2 weeks have hit a snag.
We are moving as best as we can, but unfortunately, because of what has taken place over the last week or two to 3 weeks, it has really put some pressure on the system.
That roadblock now cleared, Mr. McKenzie is optimistic that by the end of June, preparations will be about 35% complete. But that's assuming that the mayor will be able to get past another challenge, budget cuts.
Well, there have been cuts, cuts in all areas. Revenues are not as steady as it ought to be, and with what has taken place over the last couple of weeks, again, it has also affected the revenue, not just of the KCC, but the revenue in general in many other areas.
He says there have been no estimates yet as to how much the KCC plans to spend this hurricane season, but given the constraints, ideally he would prefer another El Niño year where there is usually minimal hurricane activity in the Caribbean area. That was the case last season. However, forecasters have already predicted some 23 named storms this season, with 10 to 12 expected to become major hurricanes, 5 of those intense. Heavy rains lashed sections of the corporate area last week, and Mr. McKenzie says this has enabled the KCC to identify the priority areas of its mitigation program.
The priority areas are all the ones that exit in the sea. So we look at the divisions from Duane Park going right back out to the Rockfort area, taking in Port Royal, Bull Bay, Harbourview. We look at those areas and we deem those areas to be priority areas.
He said other areas not considered threats before have popped up on the radar and have been incorporated into the council's plans. Dwayne Berbick. This week in eWatch, when last have you heard some dub poetry? Sadiqa Dairam takes a look at the art form.